You know how sometimes just a simple change in your physical point of view can totally change your mental perspective? Like maybe you climb a mountain and see your whole city laid out below you. Well, let's take that idea and just scale it way, way up. We're going to talk about what happens when you go so high that the entire planet becomes your view.
Okay, picture this. It's Christmas Eve, 1968. Three men are circling the moon, the first humans to ever do it. As their tiny Apollo 8 capsule turns, they see this. And for the very first time, humanity gets a look at its own home from a distance. Just a vibrant blue and white marble hanging in the pitch black of space. And believe me, this single photo changed, well, pretty much everything.
The man who actually snapped that photo, astronaut Bill Anders, he just summed it up perfectly. I mean, think about it. They traveled 250,000 miles to go check out another world, but the biggest, most mind-blowing discovery was looking back at our own. It's a feeling that would just echo for decades to come. And that whole moment, it brings up a really big question, right? It's really the core of what we're talking about today. What actually happens to us, to the human mind, when we stop seeing the world as the ground under our feet and instead see it as this single beautiful object floating in the cosmos? Well, that experience, it has a name. It's this incredibly powerful psychological phenomenon, and it's something people have been trying to understand for a long time. It's called the overview effect. Author Frank White came up with the term back in the 80s, and this is not just about, seeing a pretty view. It's a deep, fundamental cognitive shift. It's a change in the entire framework of how you see yourself and the world around you. So what does a cognitive shift like that actually feel like? Well, when you talk to astronauts, they report a few key things over and over again. An incredible state of awe, a feeling of self-transcendence where your own ego just kind of melts away, and this overwhelming sense of beauty and connection to every single person and every single thing back on that little blue dot. But look, definitions and bullet points can only get us so far. To really, truly get it, you have to hear from the people who have actually been there and seen it with their own eyes. Let's start at the very beginning, with the first human in space, Yuri Gagarin. Back in 1961, his immediate reaction wasn't just, wow, this is amazing. It was a call to action. He saw the beauty, and his very first thought was about protecting it. Then you have Michael Collins from Apollo 11. He said what really surprised him was how fragile it all looked. I think we all expect to see Earth as this vast, powerful thing, but instead, what hit him was its delicacy. He didn't see a giant, unbreakable world. He saw a fragile home that needed to be taken care of. For some astronauts, the experience was almost spiritual. Apollo 14's Edgar Mitchell described it with some incredibly powerful words. He called it an explosion of awareness. Not just a nice feeling, but a full-on epiphany that everything and everyone is connected. Now, it's really tempting to think of this as this purely positive, blissful, happy experience. But the reality, especially as we hear from more recent space travelers, can actually be a lot more complicated, and sometimes even pretty dark. I mean, just look at William Shatner's flight in 2021. Right after he landed, he was just overcome with emotion, calling it the most profound experience of his life. But then, a few hours later, a totally different feeling started to creep in. He realized the tears he shed weren't tears of joy, they were tears of grief. Seeing that beautiful blue Earth set against what he called the vicious coldness of space, it felt like a funeral for a dying planet. So whether it's pure ecstasy or profound grief, this experience is obviously incredibly powerful. But does it actually stick with people? Does it change them in the long run? And what about the rest of us, who only ever get to see the pictures? Well, the answer seems to be a huge yes. In fact, those early images from the Apollo missions are widely credited with helping spark the modern environmental movement. It's like they gave people on the ground a little dose of the overview effect, making big ideas like Spaceship Earth feel real and tangible. It even helped inspire the very first Earth Day back in 1970. For the astronauts themselves, though, the change isn't always some dramatic, life-altering transformation. Frank White, the researcher who studied them, he notes that the effect is usually much more subtle, more like a quiet but permanent shift in their core values and their whole perspective on life. And we've actually got data to back that up. A survey from 2018 looked at 39 astronauts, and it found a moderate change in how they saw the Earth, seeing it as beautiful and fragile. But, and this part's really interesting, it found almost zero change in their spiritual or religious beliefs.
The effect seems to be much more humanistic and environmental, not so much a religious one.
So far, we've kind of treated the overview effect like it's this straightforward psychological thing that just happens. But some thinkers are starting to argue that it's not nearly that simple. So let's take a look at the critique.
So you basically have two competing ideas here. On one side, you have Frank White, who sees it as a natural phenomenon that happens when you see Earth from space. But then you have historian Jordan Bim, who pushes back. He suggests it's more of a cultural object, something shaped by its time, influenced by the Cold War hope for a world without borders, and maybe even a lie-to-fly culture where astronauts felt pressured to report these profound positive experiences to get more flight time.
Bim also points out a potential dark side to all this. That profound feeling of getting it, of understanding the world, well, it could curdle into a kind of arrogance. A sense of superiority he calls the overlord effect, where you start to believe you've reached a level of enlightenment that other people just don't have. And all of this brings us to today. With more and more people going to space, and with all the global problems we're facing, there's this massive interest in trying to share this perspective. But how do you do that without having to send everybody to space? And right away, we run into a huge paradox. The very act of space tourism, the thing companies are selling as a way to spread this powerful perspective, it has a major environmental cost. The rocket fuel needed for these trips contributes to the exact same problems the experience is supposed to help us want to solve. It's a real catch-22. So if launching everyone into orbit isn't the answer, then what is? Well, the focus is now shifting towards simulation. On the left, you see the real deal, an astronaut's genuine experience. And on the right, you see an attempt to replicate it, a mobile VR truck designed to give kids a simulated flight into space. So, the big question is, does this kind of thing actually work? The research shows that, surprisingly, yeah, VR is pretty effective. It can definitely trigger real feelings of awe, it can create small shifts in perspective, and it can cause some really profound emotional responses. Now, has it produced that full, life-changing epiphany that Edgar Mitchell talked about? Not yet, but it's a powerful tool and it's getting closer all the time. Which really leaves us with one final big thought to chew on. From the Apollo missions all the way to today's VR simulations, we've been chasing this incredible shift in perspective. And it kind of all boils down to this one question. In the end, do we really need to leave our home just to finally truly learn how to appreciate it?